This is Daily Armenia, ＳiviLNeT's daily news digest. Here's what's making headlines in Armenia today. The Armenian parliament today passed a bill in its second and final reading, declaring the country's aspiration to join the European Union. The legislation, however, does not outline a roadmap for accession, but rather expresses Armenia's aim to develop democratic institutions, increase the well-being of society, strengthen the country's security, resilience, and the rule of law. Parliament approved the bill in its first reading last month. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has described the EU as a key partner supporting Armenia's fundamental reforms in recent years, but stressed that the bill does not imply EU membership in the direct sense. He reiterated that any decision on joining the bloc can only be made through a nationwide referendum. Despite becoming law, the bill does not mark a formal application for EU membership, but serves as a declaration of intent. Opposition parties have criticized the move, arguing that it creates the illusion that Armenia is entering a process with no clear perspective. Moscow, Armenia's largest trade partner, has voiced concern over Yerevan's EU aspirations. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned in January that joining the EU would require Armenia to exit the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union, potentially leading to major price increases in all sectors. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, however, stated that Armenia's EU ambitions are a matter of the country's sovereign right. In a statement yesterday, Armenia's defense ministry acknowledged that gunfire is occasionally heard along the border with Azerbaijan, but maintains that it does not target Armenian territory. This marks the first official recognition of the tense situation at the frontier after almost 2 weeks of Azerbaijani reports alleging ceasefire violations by Armenia. Footage posted online and reports from media may have prompted Yerevan's response, though the ministry refrained from admitting any damage. Earlier on Friday, Defense Minister Surem Papikyan dismissed claims on social media that Azerbaijani forces had shelled the mining town of Sotk in southeastern Armenia. The ministry asserted that it always provides official statements on significant ceasefire breaches and urged Baku to present concrete evidence, such as video recordings, to substantiate its allegations. Papikyan also downplayed concerns about troop movements or a potential escalation, stating that intelligence reports do not indicate any immediate threats. When asked about reports of shelling in Sotk, he referred to the ministry's earlier statement but did not explicitly confirm or deny whether gunfire had occurred. Azerbaijan has a history of using ceasefire violation accusations as a pressure tool during key negotiation developments. There are periods when such statements are absent for months, while at other times they are issued multiple times a day. The current wave of accusations intensified after Armenia and Azerbaijan announced on March 13th that they had completed negotiations on a normalization agreement. However, despite reaching consensus on the text, the deal remains unsigned, as Baku continues to impose preconditions for signing the agreement, the most contentious of which is its demand that Armenia amend its constitution. Many analysts believe Azerbaijan has no real intention of signing the agreement. Instead, by declaring negotiations over, it aims to portray Armenia as unwilling to pursue peace, potentially creating a pretext for renewed military action. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and U.S Secretary of State Marco Rubio held a phone conversation to discuss the U.S Armenia strategic partnership and regional issues, the Armenian government reported yesterday. Rubio stressed the significance of the strategic partnership agreement that was signed earlier under the Biden administration, reaffirming Washington's commitment to deepening ties with Yerevan. Pashinyan briefed Rubio on Armenia's negotiations with Azerbaijan, emphasizing that the draft normalization agreement has been finalized and is awaiting signature. The two officials agreed to maintain high-level dialogue between their countries. In its readout, the U.S. State Department said that both sides shared the view that any escalation in the South Caucasus is unacceptable. Rubio described the developments in normalization negotiations between Yerevan and Baku as an opportunity to turn the page on decades of conflict, and that now is the time for both countries to sign and ratify the agreement. The strategic partnership agreement mentioned was signed earlier in January during the last days of the Biden administration, amid uncertainty over how President Trump might approach U.S. policy in the South Caucasus and the broader region. Tigran Grigoryan, director of the Yerevan-based Regional Center for Democracy and Security, noted that Rubio has actively engaged with the issue since taking office and pointed out that in his prior discussions with Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan, he also touched upon the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process. According to Grigoryan, this suggests a degree of continuity between the previous and current administrations in their approach to the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. And finally, the ＳiviLNeT number of the day is 13. This is the number of countries where Armenia appointed commissioners for diaspora affairs last year. According to a report presented in Parliament last week, the appointed commissioners work in Austria, the US, Bulgaria, Germany, Denmark, Italy, Greece, the Netherlands, Sweden, Switzerland, Slovakia, Finland, and France. The goal of these appointments is to strengthen cooperation between Armenia and the diaspora, improve the effectiveness of related efforts, and support the preservation of Armenian identity. This initiative also aims to foster sustainable relations between Armenian communities and promote repatriation and integration efforts. And as always, please follow CivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.